What's up, guys? We're going to choose podcast. My name is Salman Ali at Salman Ali NBA on Twitter. As I try and figure out the technology for this video podcasting stuff, we have on Craig Ackerman of AT&T Sportsnet. Craig, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I've been better. You know, like I'm young, so I'm supposed to understand technology, right? Like that's what they tell you, right? That's what the handbook that you're supposed to know how to use this stuff.
So is there an wait? Let me ask you a question. Is there an age cutoff that determines young, and you're supposed to?
Am I not young anymore? Am I?
No. I'm asking you, what is the age cutoff where if you're under a particular age, you're absolutely supposed to understand how to use all the tech that's available anywhere at any time?
I don't know, honestly. I just know that at every point in my life, I've been technology inept, and people have told me that I should be ept. You know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Is ept a word?
I guess adept is the proper word.
If it's not a word, you just invented one, and I like it.
Yeah, professional writer.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should probably talk about the Rockets at some point. So, were you at Summer League?
No, I did not go. I've actually never been to
Really?
NBA Summer League. I really want to go. I'm strongly considering going next summer. There was actually a couple of summers, probably going back at least 5 years ago, probably 5 to 10 years ago, where the NBA held their annual broadcast meetings in Vegas during the Summer League. And I just so happened to be on family vacations during both of those. So that's when I probably definitely would have been there 100%, but I have never been there. I've always wanted to go. And again, I'm strongly considering going next summer.
Yeah, it's definitely an experience, and I'm actually really surprised that you haven't go because you're such a diehard basketball fan that you would like enjoy the hell out of it. I mean,
yeah, I think it would be a lot of fun, and that's what everybody tells me. It's just kind of like wall to wall ball, and one thing, it's been a long time since I've done any college basketball, but one thing I did really enjoy about college games was a preseason conference tournament or the conference tournament, right? And so you have all the teams there in one place. It's a really kind of cool atmosphere and vibe. And so, yeah. One of these days, I absolutely need to cross Vegas Summer League off my bucket list.
And now that I think about it, next year might be like the perfect year to go because the prospects coming up are like supposed to be like generational.
Right.
And it'd be a hell of a first year. I mean, I'm sure it's gonna be packed. Oh, if I may, a bit of advice if you do go. Get in and out in 3 days. And go at the beginning of Summer League. Do not go at the end, and do not go past 3 days.
It's been 20 plus years since I've been in Vegas. So, but yes, I will try to heed that advice.
Yeah, it's just like, especially because the prospects drop out so quickly, like the top end prospects, because they don't want anybody to get injured. After those first few days, it really becomes a slog. Nobody really wants to be there anymore at that point. After day 3, everybody there is working Summer League, not enjoying Summer League.
Okay, noted.
Yeah. So, I mean, you did watch the games, of course, right?
Yes, absolutely, for sure.
So, what are your impressions of number 3 overall pick Jabari Smith Jr.?
Well, I think a lot of the hype that came with him in regards to his defense was certainly well-deserved. Very, very encouraging on that end of the floor. Now, obviously, he did not shoot the ball well during his time in the Summer League, which I guess on some minor level was a bit disappointing. I mean, look, you expect these guys to kind of hit the ground running, right? And to be anything and everything that they were hyped up to be at the beginning. But his defense was certainly there. The shot, as many of the Rockets coaches and front office, including Rafael Stone, have mentioned, they're not worried about that. And frankly, I don't think they should be either. I think the shooting will come. It looked like at times he was, I don't know if aiming is the correct word. At least that's the way at times it looked like to me. When watching those games, looked like he might have been trying to aim as opposed to just sort of relax and shoot. But this defense, his length, all of that was as advertised, and I'm excited about him on the team. I think to me, he was the guy originally that I thought amongst the top 3 guys would, for this particular roster, where this group is and where the other players are and what their strengths and weaknesses are, he would have been the best fit. And so I'm going to stick with that. And again, he's young. I think he will be an excellent fit. I think he's got an extremely bright future. and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, listen, like my impression going into summer league was that I thought Jabari Smith Jr. was the worthy number 3 overall pick, and I still believe that. I haven't changed. I haven't wavered on that at all. I know Keegan Murray killed it. I know Jaden Ivey killed it. Jaden Ivey is actually the one that I might have considered, but even considering Jaden Ivey, I still would have leaned Jabari Smith Jr., especially for the Rockets in particular. The Rockets needed a player like this. They needed a player with defensive versatility that could shoot the basketball and spread it out for their guys, right? And I thought the two guys on the board that were able to do that were Chet Holmgren and Jabari Smith Jr. And if you weren't going to get Chet, then getting Jabari is a hell of a consolation prize. I mean, the guy can defend out there on the perimeter, like legitimately looks like a wing out there on the perimeter. Doesn't seem at all uncomfortable or that it's out of his grasp or anything that he's out there defending these guards, and it seems so natural for him. And that for him was as advertised. Like everybody said he was that kind of switch defender, and he was exactly that. The shooting, so I'm not worried about it at all, honestly. Like 4 games is such a small amount of time when you really think about it. And shooting slumps can extend like 10, sometimes 15 games. I mean, you've seen it. Like,
Right.
and you never know when they come. They're so random. You never know when they end. It's so random. And with great shooters, they're gonna go on shooting slumps. It happens. It's not like a big deal. This might have been a case of like they picked you pick a random sampling of games, and this happened to be the bad sampling of games where he shot the ball poorly, and he still managed to be effective without shooting the basketball
Right.
well. Now I'm not just talking about defensively, like offensively, like the guy was getting to the free throw line, like doing all his little tricks to debate people into fouling him, and I think that's a real mark of like like high level efficiency because if the jump shot's not falling, find ways to get points on the board. And free throw shooting is definitely a way that he's going to be able to successfully do that. It's not only that he can get to the free throw line, it's that he's going to shoot a high percentage of the free throw line. And his jumper looks so fluid, looks so natural, very textbook. I again, no doubt that it's going to go in. Um and he did get to the basket, had a few nice moves where he would spin move, go to attack the basket, go into the chest of the defender, and like those little stuff, that kind of stuff impresses me, and I'd like to see more of that from him. Um,
And,
and
and and the scouting report about him being so long and his jump shot basically being unblockable. I think all of that was true. I mean, I think he,
exactly,
especially on those turnarounds around the elbow, which he was very effective with in college as well. He's going to be able to get his looks. I think um, at least initially he's going to have to be somebody that's going to have to be set up by his ball handlers. There wasn't a ton of that going on with this particular group in summer league, but look, he's got an enormous amount of talent. He's got the measurables. He's super young. He will continue to, and I've been on various other podcasts and have discussed this ad nauseum as well. I think, unlike Chet Holmgren, as he grows older and matures, his body will fill out. I am still very much skeptical that Chet Holmgren will ever fill out with his body type, but I do believe that Jabari will. And yeah, look, I think the Rockets would have been thrilled to get any of the top 3 guys. I think that's where they were when they realized they were picking in the top 3, where they were coming out of the top 3. Jabari, obviously, up until basically the last 24 hours, was number 1 on so many people's boards. And so, look, the Rockets got an incredible talent. He's going to be just fine. He fits in the timeline. He fills he plugs some of the holes, particularly the defensive holes that this team so desperately needs to fill moving forward as it tries to grow, develop, and get better. And yeah, I'm very bullish on him and his future. And look, sometimes summer league is not the end all be all of predicting where somebody ultimately might be. And in fact, a lot of it really doesn't matter at all in many instances. But I think the things that, especially again, the signs were incredibly encouraging for him on the defensive end of the floor, especially with his ability to defend and play multiple positions. That versatility, that switchability is so important in today's game. I think he's gonna have a very bright future here.
And that's what makes his floor so high. That is a postseason skill. Being able to defend out on the perimeter, multiple positions, not be shaken by who you're defending or who your assignment is on a given night. Like that's something that's going to immediately translate to postseason basketball. And so is 3-point shooting, which was another. You mentioned the defense being a weakness. 3-point shooting was not a strength of Houston's at
No,
all. Yeah, like they were like 23rd in the NBA in 3-point percentage.
they were
And
okay, but their consistency level
yeah,
was just they were either really good or not so much. They've got to become a more consistent 3-point shooting team. That's one of a handful of areas that they have to get better at if they expect to take another step and then ultimately the following steps that make them a playoff team and then hopefully on down the line back into contending status.
right. And they didn't have the personnel to get better at 3-point shooting, and this is someone that will help you get better at 3-point shooting and like slots in immediately for them at a position that makes sense. I think he's gonna be fine. The ball handling is a concern, right? Like I'm not gonna pretend like it's not. Like for someone, when you draft someone number 3 overall, you are expecting them at least a little bit to become some sort of creator. And I think that's gonna take some time. As you said, he's gonna have to be set up initially. That's fine. Like on this roster, he's gonna actually have a lot of breathing room to be able to grow into that kind of player. He's not gonna be asked to do anything crazy. There are capable ball handlers and creators all over the Rockets, and they don't have to. He doesn't have to do that for them. That's not what they need right now. And his game kind of reminds me. I'm not sure what you think of this comparison. Offensively, LaMarcus Aldridge. Like just like maybe not the guy you want. Bringing the ball up or for attacking from the perimeter, but like the fadeaway twos. He loves getting to that area, and like the difference is LaMarcus was too stubborn to actually stretch out to the 3-point line, right? And Jabari, he has that willingness
Well,
to
except
do
when he
that.
played the Rockets in that playoff series in games 1 and 2 at Toyota Center, and he was just ridiculous.
Yeah,
2 games
yeah.
where he put up 40 plus and was hitting turnaround fadeaway threes falling out of bounds. What year was that? Was it 2012?
2014, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. It's been a minute. It's been that might have been that was 2014. That was the Chandler Parsons switch, I remember, on Dame.
That was that series. Yeah, because they came in, won games 1 and 2, Rockets, and then again they were 0.9 away from forcing game 7 and bringing it back to Houston, where I think they absolutely would have won that series, but it is what it is.
Right, but like offensively, that's the guy I can see him becoming. And LaMarcus, he had a few more like go-to moves like in the post, but like when coming out of college, but like largely he was kind of like this, right? Like he was kind of someone that needed to work on ball handling, was a hell of a shooter. Like he had the beautiful jumper coming out. Everyone thought he was going to be a great shooter in the NBA, and he was. And a guy that was consistently able to get you 15 to 20 points per game, make a few all-star games, and stretch out the defense. And I think Jabari will be able to do that to the upteenth exponent. I don't know what am I saying. He'll be able to do that even more because of his 3-point shooting, and he'll also be able to defend. And I thought his motor is actually a little bit better than LaMarcus. LaMarcus at times, like sometimes he doesn't get the ball in a few possessions. He kind of shuts off a little bit, and Jabari never shuts off at all. Like every possession he is on, and I don't know. I think that's a good bar for him. If he can strive to be that kind of offensive player, I think the Rockets are really happy with that selection at number 3. And I think even if he never reaches that kind of offensive ceiling, where he is defensively is going to make Houston happy because that's exactly what they need.
I'm just glad that they have some length on this particular group, because you went in and when you're watching these games, regular NBA games on TV, the size of these athletes it doesn't really come across all that much. But when you're there in person and you see these teams with so much size, in particular length, and people who can just swallow you up, that was something the Rockets quite honestly have been they really didn't even have much of that during the Harden era either. They weren't necessarily the rangiest, longest team going in the league. But I'm glad that they've added some of that with him, and obviously with Eason too. I'm sure we'll talk about him here in a moment. He was incredibly impressive during his summer league debut. But yeah, I'm glad they've added some of that. And I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be just fine. I think his skill set, where he fits in now with the timeline and the roster and the other players around him, he's going to be just fine.
He is super young too. He's like 19 and
just turned. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's got a lot of time. He's got a lot of time, and I think he's starting at a good baseline. You mentioned the length. Quick anecdote. I remember walking around like the Bowser Toyota Center when the Bucks came into town, and everybody there, like I could not look anyone in the eye because they were all like 3 feet ahead of my, like just towering ahead of me, like Brooke Lopez, Giannis, Chris Middleton, like everybody there was giant and massive. I felt like I was on a different planet than where these guys came from. And like that's the fact that Houston can, now start to match up with some of these bigger teams. I think that's something that, it's nice to have that in your back pocket. But you mentioned Tari Eason, and you're right. We were going to talk about him. Tari Eason, he impressed the hell out of me, man. I did not see him. Defensively, we knew he was going to be this, right? Like this is exactly the kind of player he was advertised to be. Offensively, I was not someone who thought that was going to translate. Like I would admit, like I thought he was going to be your kind of typical 3-and-D wing at the NBA level, and I even wrote that in my blurb about Tari Eason. I was like, he's really capable offensively at the college level, but at the NBA level, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to do some of this. And at least against NBA level athletes, he was doing some of this. He was leaking out in transition, getting out, and getting easy baskets, getting to the basket, getting to the free throw line, making 3-pointers. Like his offensive upside is something I may have underestimated. Like he can be kind of Jeremy Grantish offensively. If he hits his ceiling, like that guy is going to be really capable offensively, and you can play him at 3, 4. Even at the college level for LSU, he was playing backup 5 at points, which is crazy versatility. And the Rockets now have like Jayshawn Tate, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith Jr., these long switchable athlete defenders that can play multiple positions that, together could form like a hell of a wall in the front court for them.
I like the ability. I like his ability to get into the corners and shoot threes. Like the Rockets last year shot fewer corner threes than any team in the league, and I think a lot. Corner 3-point shooting has a lot to do with floor spacing, and as we all know, with Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. being the athletes that they are, the more space that they have to operate with, the better off this team is going to be moving forward. It was nice to see Eason sort of slide into that corner 3-point spot that we saw was occupied all those years by PJ Tucker. But yeah, he was incredibly impressive. Obviously, his physical measurements are comparable to Kawhi Leonard. I'm not comparing him to Kawhi Leonard, who's a Hall of Fame player, but his physical measurements are very similar. He's got the scouting report on him was he's got a very high motor. I think that was evident as well. Very athletic. I think
athlete, like one of the best athletes in the draft. I mean,
to me, if he can, it seems. I guess I don't know if this was a knock on him coming into the draft. It seems to me his release from his jump shot release might be a tad bit on the slow side, but I think as long as he has the requisite space needed to get off that shot, it looks like he's going. Fingers crossed, he'll be a reliable 3-point shooter, particularly again from those corners, which I think is very important for this team moving forward. But yeah, I thought he was extremely impressive. Another guy again, and going back to Jabari, it seems like when he was, and it's his only summer league, but it's when Jabari sat, things kind of got out of hand, right? So even though he wasn't efficient on offense, that speaks to, I think, his impact on the floor. I think Tari is going to be another guy like that moving forward. And again, he's a little bit older, has a little bit more maturity in him. Again, when I saw him, when he came in for the initial press conference, I was like, wow, he is built like Kawhi Leonard. So I thought that was an excellent pick. I know he was somebody that a lot of people going into the draft really wanted. And there he was, and the Rockets added him, and I'm looking forward to watching him in training camp and in the preseason. I had a chance to, I did go to a workout before they left for Vegas because I wanted to see them practice before they ultimately left. And in that workout, so again, the same things that we're talking about now with Eason and Jabari were evident there in that practice. So yeah, I mean, if the Rockets can, to steal kind of your Bucks analogy, and look, they have to get it. They have to get better defensively. There's no question about it. They were the worst defensive team in the league last year. If Sengun is somebody who can basically hold his own, much like Brook Lopez, right? Even though he's not nearly the stature of Brook Lopez, but if he can hold his ground, and he's a big-bodied guy, if he can hold his ground, and then you can have guys like Smith and Eason, in essence, with their length, walled off 1/3 of the floor, much like the Bucks do with Giannis. There is personnel. There's the ability, personnel-wise, to get better pretty quick defensively. So again, fingers crossed that will be the case, because I think if they're going to make any strides, if they're going to be any strides this year, this is still about growth and development. You don't want them to be the worst team in the league, right? That should be goal number one, to not be the worst team in the league for the third consecutive year. But outside of that, to me, where this will be an incredibly successful season will be, as a group, how much better are they defensively from day one to the end of the season? If they're growing and developing and getting better defensively, then this group will be on the right track. Because I think ultimately, much like last year, even though they had some deficiencies on offense, we talked about the three-point shooting, there just wasn't enough consistency there. They got to cut down on their turnovers. They were last in the league by a mile in that department as well, which in part really hurt their defense because they were giving up so many easy buckets in transition. But I think I think they're going to be fine offensively, especially with Green and Porter, who I think are going to have monster offensive seasons. I really do. I think both are capable of scoring 20+ points per game. I think similar to what we saw at the end of last season when Wood was kind of was sat down at the end of last year. Offensively, I think they're going to be good enough, but I think if they can make strides defensively, then they'll definitely be on the right track as a team.
Yeah, Eason, I briefly mentioned, guy was a analytics darling, by the way. He was someone that, the modeling systems thought this guy should have been like somewhere, should have been a lottery pick by far, and some even had him in the top 10. Like that's how high the modeling systems projected.
So did Sengun. A lot. There were some people. I mean, the Rockets felt that he was. They tried to get him at 6. I mean, and there were other people who felt that he was absolutely, based, especially on the advanced metrics, that he was a top 10 player, if not higher than that. So if Sengun was really impressive last year, and he was impressive. He hit the ground running last year at the very start, and I think Eason might be another one of those guys that's going to be able to hit the ground running.
Yeah, I mean, I was tipped off the Sengun thing last year about him, killing it on these measurables. I mean, on these modeling systems, and like two guys that I was told to watch out for going into the draft was Tari Eason and Keegan Murray. So just take that for what you will. That's just, these guys seem to know what they're doing, or like these systems seem to be doing something right. Anybody else stick out to you before we move on?
I mean, we might as well talk about TyTy Washington, right? I mean, he had a very good feel for the game. Shifty. I think he's, ultimately, I think his ceiling is probably backup guard as we move forward. I don't know. There's only so many players you can play in a particular rotation. I don't know how much playing time, at least initially, he's going to get at the NBA level. Perhaps maybe something similar to Josh Christopher, who ultimately forced his way into the rotation as the season wore along. But I think he's got a real nice feel for the game, which is very important for a point guard. He's going to be a table setter, which is very important for a point guard, somebody who can settle things down, which is extremely important. Again, back to my point of for a team that turned the ball over a ton. I mean, back-to-back years where the Rockets turned the ball over way too much. But I was very satisfied with what I saw from him in that regard. I thought it was a terrific job of asset management by Rafael Stone of the Rockets front office with the way they ultimately drafted him and moved back and acquired future assets. I thought that was a pretty smart play there from a front office perspective. And look, I thought Josh Christopher at times probably tried to do a little bit too much, but during the summer league, at times he forced things a little bit. But it was pretty evident that level of play that he was kind of beyond that. And again, I think we saw that last year anyway with him. I'm excited to watch Josh Christopher again this season. I think he kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit with the excitement with Green and Sengun and so forth. But I think he had a very solid rookie season. I think he's got a very bright future as well. Great physical tools as well. But yeah, I mean, I thought, to me, obviously, I think Eason was the guy who stood out more than anybody. I think that's why he was first team All Summer League, and I think it was a deserved recognition. It was great to see him and Smith crash the glass. The Rockets, again, another area that they need to improve upon to get better defensively is they've got to finish off possessions with rebounds, something that they did not do last year. And so if Smith and Eason can stay committed to the defensive glass, that will help moving forward. But I think it was another really, really good draft. Now, again, the team's going to be super young, really young, very inexperienced. That ultimately doesn't lead to a ton of winning. But again, as I said earlier, that's not what this season, again, is all about. It's still about the growth and development of these young players. And as it started to, other guys around the league, other players around the league have started to talk about how much talent the Rockets have amassed. And I think that's absolutely true. And I'm excited to watch them grow.
Yeah, it does seem like last year they went all offense in the draft, and this year they went all defense, right? And these guys are going to slot in pretty well. They're going to be very nice complementary pieces to what they have going. Yeah, it's not going to take a long time for Tari Eason to become a fan favorite. Like, the guy is going to be beloved, like, very fast, like, really, really fun guy to watch, especially when he leaks out and gets steals, gets hands on balls, gets the offense going. It's going to be really fun. Yeah, I agree with you on TyTy. Good, really good organizer. Very natural point guard. Guy who could tell has played the point guard position most of his life. And I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be in play for that backup point guard spot, as you said, for the Rockets. So you did mention Kevin Porter Jr. And you talked about how you thought he could be a 20 points per game guy. Let's talk about Kevin Porter Jr. because I am writing about him this month, and KPJ is someone. To be frank, I don't have much faith in becoming a long-term starter on a championship level basketball team. I think he's going to be a very good player. That you can believe both things, right? You can believe. I think he's not a championship level point guard. Still think he's going to be a very good player and will play in important playoff games. And I think I'm more and more starting to not be as dismissive of the idea that he could become a starter one day. And that's because of a conversation I had this week with the scout, who told me, reminded me of a player I didn't like very much in the late 2000s, this was a guy who I thought, I don't know why they just keep starting him. I don't get it. Like, it doesn't make sense. I don't think he's that good, but this team just kept on starting it, kept on hammering into the ground. And lo and behold, he went on to make an all-star team. That player's Mike Conley. Mike Conley was a guy, early on had his struggles in Memphis, but that team was, internally believed in him. Front office down to every single player on the roster. And, even if people on the outside had their doubts, even if there was frustrations about his play or his efficiency scoring the basketball, they just kept hammering it down. Like, this guy could be a really good player one day. This guy is capable of being a starter on a championship caliber basketball team, and he did. He became that guy. So it's just a reminder that these guys are projects sometimes, right? It's okay if they're rough in the beginning. Maybe give them some time. Sometimes not everybody hits right away. Sometimes it takes 3, 4, sometimes even 5 years of growing pains. And then you'll see the player become what they're going to become. It takes a lot of patience, a hell of a lot of patience to keep on running it back. Like the Grizzlies legit had to wait 5 years before he became a positive basketball player, but he became that guy. And those reps mattered. The fact that they gave him those starting reps, they mattered. So, I think I'm going to look at, Kevin Porter Jr. a little bit differently next year. I think the bad games, the bad stretches, I'm going to give it some time. I think I'm willing to at least wait it out and not be as dismissive as I have been in the past.
Well, hey, look, I mean, the Rockets, the organization is in a position here, and they've ultimately played the situation with his extension. I think the way that they've been patient, the way they should have played it. Look, the organization believes in Kevin Porter Jr. the player, and they believe in Kevin Porter Jr. the person as well. Despite some of the hiccups, there is a very strong support system for these guys. Not just him, but in particular him, but it's this team from the organization and the coaches. They believe in who he is now. And again, ultimately though, this is going to be an important year for him. I mean, look, he's obviously looking for generational wealth, if you will, with a contract extension. So this is an important year for him. I think he is super talented, and the Rockets, they're in where they are in their developmental stage, is that they do have the luxury to give him one more year, give him another year to figure out, okay, who are you? What is your role? Where is your place? Are you ultimately a starting caliber player on a good team? Is your future more of a six-man role, so on and so forth? But they have the opportunity with where they are in this developmental curve to give it another season with him. I think another large part of the upcoming season is with Sengun, obviously on the fast track here to become the full-time regular starter at the center position. Where exactly does he fit? What exactly is?
Can we table this? Yeah,
we can get to that too. But yeah. I think it's kind of similar to that. They're going to get they have another full season. Look, the second half of last year, Kevin Porter Jr. was terrific. He was brilliant. After, again, you go back to the end of the season when Wood sat down, and I think in part, we haven't talked about the Christian Wood trade, but in part what that trade did, which is so important to NBA teams, is that it reset the hierarchy here with this group moving forward, which I think will benefit Kevin. It's obviously going to benefit Jalen Green. It reset roles. If Kevin can repeat his second half of last year moving forward, and I think you might have something where turnovers were down, shooting numbers were up, rim attacks were up. But look, if with him, if he does take that next step, I think that's all the best for the organization. If he ultimately doesn't, and maybe his future isn't necessarily as a starter on a playoff team, or maybe that role is more of a six-man. Ultimately, I think this still might be a place that will have a future and fit for him because how much the organization is stuck by him. I think that has meant a lot to him personally. Now, obviously, business always becomes a factor in this moving forward, and ultimately the only factor in this for both the organizations and players when it comes to contract talks. But I think he has this is the best opportunity he's had in his brief NBA career to prove to not only the Rockets but the league on where he is, who he is as a player, and can he be a true foundational piece for this team on into the future.
Yeah, you're more optimistic about him receiving that news about not being a starter than I am. But
I think he's going to have a big year. I look now. Does the big year ultimately translate to more wins? I don't know, but I think number wise, I think he's going to put up some crazy stats this season. I think him and Jalen Green are going to have so much space to work with, right? And with Sengun as the offensive. I know. With Sengun as the offense, I'm a huge Sengun guy.
Okay.
As you can tell, but with him as the hub, sort of making sure everything operates well. I do think Kevin Porter Jr. is going to have a big season.
Okay, and I promise we're going to get to Sengun. I promise we're going to do it. So yeah, I agree. Like he towards the end of the last season, he definitely got better. Like, the 3-point percentage was, an area he definitely improved at. He became a more capable catch and shoot guy. It was in the 40 percentile.
Elite catch and shoot guy.
Yeah, he was like 40-something% from catch.
I think it was closer to 50%.
Yeah. He was killing it. He was killing it on the catch and shoot jumpers. And for this particular team, that could be a trait that proves really, really useful. And defensively, he got better as an on-the-ball defender. Still has a lot of areas to improve in. He was really below water before last year. Got closer to sea level, we'll say, last season. And we'll see if he improves in that area again. I should note that he was dealing with a thigh injury last year, like that nagging thigh bruise, that bone contusion, like that was ailing him all of last season, and it never felt like he could get a hold of it. So I don't think that's going to be an issue going into next season. I think he's had a lot of time to rest on that. He's had a lot of time to recover, and I think we'll see how he does with a full year of health. Knock on wood. So I have bet Adam Spolane that the Houston Rockets will win 10 more games than they did last year. They won 20 games last year. I think they can get to 30. Is it too ambitious? Probably, but that's how much I like what they did with the roster this summer. If these pieces hit, I think there's a very clear vision here for a team that can compete at a high level.
Look, if they get to 30 wins, it would be an enormously successful season. I mean, I think a good target obviously would be 25 to 30. And if they got to 30 on the high end, I think that would be an incredibly successful season. Look, ultimately, if this team ends up winning more games than most people are predicting that they will, that's a good thing, because that means they have a ton of talent here, and this talent is maturing and growing and heading in the right direction. Ultimately, if they fall a little bit short of some of those win totals, well, there's another great draft coming up, right? So I think they're in a pretty good spot either way. Am I ready? Do I think, as of right now, without seeing this team on the floor against NBA competition, do I think this is a team that's going to compete for a play-in spot? No, I do not.
No, I don't either.
Yeah. As of right now, no, I don't. Now, if they ultimately do, again, that's icing on the cake. But typically this is a process, and you have to take steps in the right direction. And we talked about some of these other guys. The biggest question, the biggest thing ultimately, whether it's now or a year from now, and I think I even talked about this in other forums 12 months ago, is the Rockets generation, is the generational talent that they need to play at the highest level, is that player already on the roster right now, or are they not? And in the NBA, frankly, a lot of this stuff around the fringes doesn't really matter until you have somebody like that. And ultimately, we're talking about Jalen Green, right? Jalen Green right now, is he a generational talent? Is he ultimately a future top 15 guy in the league? If he is, again, the Rockets have a ton of talent. And then if he is, then all this other stuff ultimately will work itself out, and they'll be just fine. If he isn't, then they're going to have to ultimately find that particular player in the draft or via a trade or free agency moving forward, much like they did with James Harden in the trade from Oklahoma City. But that's what they need. They need Jalen Green to be that guy. And if he ultimately is that guy, that all this other stuff, they have plenty of talent. They have ultimately moving forward, they have all kinds of cap flexibility, still tons of future draft assets. they will be just fine. But ultimately, I said this going into last year, the biggest question is, who is Jalen Green? I still think that's the most important thing for this team this season. Is he that guy? Can he be that guy? Will he be that guy? And we'll find out. If he is, everything else will fall into place.
His stretch from January to the end of the season, like he was playing like an all-star. Like if he had played like that for the entire season, he would be in contention for a Western
really
Conference
good.
all-star spot. Like that's how good he was. He was shooting ridiculous, like near 40% from 3-point line. I think he was 60% true shooting. At the rim, he improved like crazy. Mid-range jumpers, he was getting to it at will. Obviously, the highlight plays are always going to be there, but he got to a point where he was one of the worst shooters in basketball last year, and he got to league average. He was 55% true shooting at the end of the season. That's league average. So he was scoring 17 points per game on league average efficiency for his rookie year. That's really impressive. I think the other areas I want to watch for him, the defense, obviously.
Again, that goes for everybody,
but especially him. I think he has a lot of work to work on defensively. Playmaking. I think it's cool to average 3.5 assists per game if you're like the third or fourth best player on a championship team. If you're like the first or second guy, you need to get to like 5 to 6 to 7 assists per game at least. And that's an area he needs to get better at. And I think he can get better. He can stand to get better as a rebounder. I mean, he is a ridiculous athlete. I mean, to see him get stuff off the glass and go full court with it would be nice. I think that's an area of his game that he can improve. And the fact that he has all these areas of the game that he can improve in, and he was already at such a high baseline, does bode well for him potentially being one of those guys that you mentioned, being that cornerstone talent, being that generational guy that can be one of your best players on a championship team. I 100% agree. All that other stuff does not matter. And most importantly, and I would ask you to brace yourself, Craig, I think this is the year that my guy, Alperen Sengun, becomes a household name for NBA fans. I know that's a little crazy, but I'm writing about it right now. It could be out by the time I release this podcast. I think Sengun establishes himself as one of the best two players on the roster. I think the Rockets have done a good job at insulating him defensively with Tari Eason, Jabari Smith, and Jae'Sean Tate. I would expect at least two of those guys to hit and be in the starting lineup alongside Sengun. The Rockets can now successfully surround Sengun with defenders and shooters, and I think that's super valuable for a guy who plays the way that he does. He's going to have shooters all across the floor at every position, especially if Eric Gordon is on the roster come opening training camp, and he's he gets a starting spot. You got a lineup of KPJ, Jalen Green, Eric Gordon, Jabari Smith Jr., and Alperen Sengun. I mean, forget about it. I mean, like, these guys can all catch and shoot threes, and Sengun will be able to find them. And I cannot wait to see how Jalen and Sengun play together in particular this season, because we didn't get to see a lot of it last season. They played together a grand total of 55 minutes last season, and those minutes were largely consisting of terrible floor spacing. These two guys make sense together. And you want to know who I like, what I see as an absolute apex for this duo, and clicking on all cylinders. And, people are going to think this is crazy, but who cares? This is my podcast. Brace yourself. Jokic and Murray. That's who I see. And listen, I'm not the first person to make the Jokic comparison with Sengun. When I went to Houston's training camp in Galveston last year to write my story on Sengun, that's the name that kept coming up. And I never brought it up. That wasn't me. That was them. I was sure to be there, record it, and write it down, but I never brought it up myself. You can go back and read it somewhere. It's somewhere in my archives. But Murray and Green it's not like a perfect comp, but it works because of how well both of these guys move without the basketball, and how well Green could potentially work alongside Sengun. One of my favorite qualities about Green, and when I was watching him play with the Ignite, is how willing he was to move without the basketball and play off of others. If he does that next to Sengun, if he's doing some of that cutting, that running around screens to get open threes, Sengun will find him, and they'll be able to generate easy offense off of each other. I can't wait to see it. I don't care if people think that's too bold. I think that kind of pairing is both of their apexes, and I think they make a lot of sense next to each other, especially with high level defenders and shooters surrounding them at every position. I can't wait to see it. I want to see those two guys play together so badly. I can't. They're definitely going to play more than 55 minutes. That might happen within the first week. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I am a huge Sengun fan. I was in the practices the first week of training camp, and I thought Sengun was by far the best player they had in training camp. I mean, I was just wowed by his basketball IQ, his passing ability, his feel for the game. We saw that obviously when he was on the floor. He will be the straw that stirs this drink this season. Look, he does have many Jokic-like qualities. No question about that. I will stop short of comparing it. Jokic is an all-time great. And Sengun, if say he were 3 inches taller, maybe I think we could get a little closer.
hey, I said Jokic and Murray. I never said he is Jokic.
A little closer to that, but he does, again, he as a big guy, right, from the high post, you can throw the ball, right, and everything else can operate off of him and his feel.
He can be a hub
for the game. And again, as I said earlier, I think this season can he be? There are some people I've talked to in the league who aren't who don't think, they think he's ultimately a backup quality talent because he doesn't necessarily have a position, if you will. I disagree with that, but I'm excited to
very strongly.
I'm excited to see that as someone who's going to be playing 30 plus minutes a game, someone who's going to be consistently matched up with guys like Jokic and Embiid. Can he hold his? Again, he doesn't have to. He's not going to be a rim protector. But physically, and he's a well-built guy. He may not be the tallest 5 in the league, but he's a well-built guy. Much like the Brook Lopez analogy that I use, can he hold his ground, right? With his strength, he's got a real good lower base. Can he hold his ground and then allow the Rockets athletes and length around him now with this roster to protect the rim better than they did last year? Can that happen? Will that happen? To me, that's what I'm looking for him defensively. Can he continue to hold his ground there? And obviously, he's just going to wow again, I think, offensively with his passing ability. And he's one of those talents where he doesn't need 15 shots a game, right, to have a high level impact on if your team wins or not, right? He can take 8 shots a night, right? You have him as your hub. Everything else will work off of them. You've got cutters, and when the Rockets, if they cut and play off Sengun, if teams overplay the cut, there's going to be guys open like Jabari Smith and Eric Gordon if he's on the roster and so forth, and Kevin Porter Jr. to knock down shots. And I think we can already trust Sengun to make the right play in that regard. I think he's a special talent. I really do. But I still think there's a little bit of a jury still out on what his fit is, what his natural position is in this league, and is he a full-time starter as well? But I am ecstatic to find out because I am very bullish on him and his future.
I think where I ultimately land on him is he's a center. I think that's the position that makes the most sense for him. Can he eventually be a guy who can stretch the floor for you? Yeah, but if you play power forward, you have to be able to switch at some point. And I don't ever see him being someone who's going to be able to switch, right? And so, can he be a guy that's able to capably rim protect? I think that's something I can see for him.
Well, now the you're talking about rim protection. You can rim protect it, and look, the Golden State Warriors were an elite rim protecting team. And a lot of times they were doing it. And Kevon Looney's not exactly an elite shot blocker, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they were doing that without Looney because, first of all, you have to rim protection always starts with stopping dribble penetration. And you already alluded to that in terms of the defensive growth of both Green and Porter Jr. has to get better, right? They have to stop the ball at the point of attack better than they have the last couple of years, period. End of story. They have to do that. Then you combine, we talked about the length of guys like Eason and Jabari Smith. That's a factor as well. You've got to make passing lanes very difficult, but you don't necessarily have to be an explosive shot blocker to protect the rim. And so that's why I said that I think if he's going to become a rim protector defensively, it's going to be about holding his ground, right?
Positionally,
positionally holding your ground and then allowing some of these other guys to help clean up some of that stuff around the rim as help defenders.
Right. And I think he did a pretty decent job at that last season. I thought
it was,
yeah, and like I thought,
but now he's going to be going consistently against frontline guys.
Absolutely. It's going to be totally different, right? And, being the guy that impresses off the bench in 15-minute stretches is completely different than being a full-time starter and going up against Embiid, Jokic, all the best centers in the NBA, Bam, whoever you want to put out there. He's going to have to defend those guys. But I think with, normal player development, obviously he's going to get stronger. Obviously he's going to, learn defensive schemes. He's going to learn drop coverage. He's going to understand all this stuff better. Do I think he can be someone who, plays good drop defense as a center and protects the rim, with capable defenders next to him, with like athletes all around him? Yeah, I think he can be that guy. And I think part of the reason I'm confident he can be that guy is, again, because they have this insulation in the front court. And I think obviously Jalen has to take a big step as a point of attack defender. And whoever plays next to Jalen, if that's KPJ, if that's someone else, they have to be a plus, right? Like Jalen can be someone that is, sitting at league average. Whoever's next to Jalen has to be a league plus defender, right? He has to be someone that's legitimately stopping dribble penetration. Because otherwise, I don't know if it's smart to put all your eggs on Jalen Green becoming that guy, right? And I think if you can do that as a team, building, going forward, you've already accomplished the hard thing, which is finding athletes to play in that front court next to Sengun. If you can player development wise or trade wise, free agency wise, find another guard that can be out there on the perimeter next to Green, you have a defense that can theoretically work. Obviously, all of this is theoretical. We're talking about a team that's average age is like 22.
And Sengun, as of the recording of this podcast, hasn't even turned 20.
Right. Yeah.
And still hasn't turned 20.
Yeah. I didn't know that. I thought he was 20. Yeah. I mean,
actually, he's. I don't know when you're posting this, but he actually turns 20 in a couple of days.
Okay.
July the 25th is his birthday. So we're recording this on July 23rd.
Happy birthday, Sengun. It's going to come out Monday. Happy birthday.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how he develops moving forward. And next year, I mean, the runway is clear for him, to have a big year, to really show people what we've been talking about in hushed tones. Hopefully that becomes a conversation nationally, because the guy is a hell of an offensive player. Like, he is so good. Not only the passing, we gush about that, but he is such a skilled post player, and one of those guys who I think can be someone you can throw the ball to and legitimately expect to score like 1.2 points per 100 possession. I mean, 1.2 points per possession. I think he can get to that point. And if you can get to that point, you're a guy that a team can rely upon to score. And I think he can do that. I would not be at all surprised if he gets to like 17 or 18 points per game next season. That's how confident I am in him. I just think his usage is going to go up. I think, again, like sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes you see it in practice. It's like, okay, yeah, this guy should really be getting the ball more. This guy should be someone we should be highlighting a little bit more. I think it happened after training camp. Like he was killing it in training camp, and he did not go down to the G League. He was a 6th or 7th man on the team because of how well he performed in training camp.
Yeah, he's super talented.
Yeah, he is. I'm super excited. I know what all this crap that I'm saying. It's a little bit bold. It's a little bit out there. But he makes me really excited. Like he's the kind of basketball player that I get really excited to go watch.
He's fun. Like he's like fun. Like Jalen Green is fun. Like these guys are fun. Like carve out the 1-15 start from last year. Just kind of eliminate that. This was for a team with the worst record in the league for the second straight year. They were fun. This was a fun group. I mean, especially the second half of the year. They still weren't winning a ton of games, but this they were like a highlight factory.
And you saw the blueprint too. Like it started to take shape, like especially with Jalen Green.
Yeah, and he's just fun, and Jalen Green he's just a freak, right? I mean, but Sengun's passing was just it was I just go type in his highlights in YouTube or something. They're the passing. They're just I occasionally will just watch those. I'm just like it's incredible, and it gets me so excited about the upcoming season because he's going to be playing more often. Look, he's got to stay out of foul trouble.
Right. That's a big thing we probably should have mentioned. Right.
Got to stay out of foul trouble, which is one step for young bigs that can take sometimes. Got to stay out of foul trouble. But man, he's crazy talented. But I think ultimately we'll find out whether or not he can keep up with the Joneses, if you will, as a frontline five in the league when he gets matched up on a regular basis. Now, look, there aren't as many behemoths, traditional behemoths in the league anymore. But ultimately can he hold his own as a defender and allow? And I think again, holding your ground and then allowing. And I think we saw quite a bit of this in the summer league with Jabari Smith. He's got terrific instincts as a weak side help defender, right? And he can cover so much ground so quickly with his length and his ability to move horizontally. That's what Sengun has to do. Hold your ground, hold up your guy, and then you'll get some help. And again, I think if they can do that, the defense will work itself into becoming respectable, which is something, again, this team desperately needs. You would prefer better than respectable, but we want to take steps here. They've got to get to respectable defensively first if they expect to take any other further steps as a team.
As I was watching Summer League this year with the Rockets, I was just picturing this is a case with all great passers. You just picture the way that great passer can utilize all these new tools, these new toys, if you will. Like, just imagine Tari Eason like leaking out in transition, Alperen Sengun grabbing the board and finding him for a full court kind of pass, which I think he can do, or finding shooters like Jabari Smith Jr. in the corner, like because he's always going to be trailing or in that corner. Like just the ways he can utilize these new pieces they brought in, it's gonna help. I think it's gonna help him a lot. The foul trouble, big key. He has to get better. To play 30 minutes a game, you have to be under 6 fouls a game, and I think that's something that the Rockets are gonna have to really work on with him, and he's gonna have to really work on. Yes, you're undersized. Everybody knows that. You may not be the strongest guy out there, but you cannot be fouling these guys. You have to find other ways to be effective. Put your hands up. Let the guy score on you. If that in a last case scenario, do not foul because the team is going to need you offensively.
Well, if he is in foul trouble, it will be disappointing, but perhaps maybe that means some minutes for Boban, and that's never a bad thing from an excitement standpoint.
I completely forgot. He's on the roster. I can't wait. I can't wait to watch him.
I think Boban's really good, actually. I think he's very skilled. Like his lack of mobility at times hurts him. One thing I will say is that another area the Rockets have to become more consistent finishing around the rim. When they practice and Boban is standing at the rim, they'll learn to get more consistent trying to finish over the top of that mountain. I can tell you that.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I completely forgot that Boban was on the roster. I mean,
apparently he's America's greatest teammate too. So.
Right, he's won some teammate of the year award, right? Or
it seems like everywhere he's been, everybody loves this guy. Like his teammates love him.
Tobias Harris was a fan.
I'm sorry.
Tobias Harris was a fan.
They were the Toby and Bobby thing, and not to mention he's an actor. He's like a legitimate movie star. So
he did a fantastic job in that movie. I don't think we talked enough about how Boban performed in Hustle. Like he did such a great job of being the European player stereotype. Oh, I'm actually older than listed. I have this kid that's 12 years old he's 5. It was great. It was a great movie.
And it seems like any team he's been on, like he's beloved by the fan base. Look, he's not ultimately. If the Rockets are on the right track, he's not going to be playing much, if at all, which is basically for the most part been his MO in his career. But I think just having him on the team, I think will be an added bonus. I'm frankly excited to kind of get to know him because everybody speaks So, Ryan Hollins loves the guy, and I don't know what stop that Ryan was at where he was teammates with him, but he loves the guy. He says he's incredible. He's such a good person.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
Ryan
Yeah,
was in so many different places. I'm
yeah.
not sure where.
That's why it's hard. Yeah, yeah.
Or
No,
maybe he wasn't a team. Ryan knows everybody. All I know is he speaks very highly of Boban as a person. So
yeah, that locker room is going to be upbeat, and that's important for a rebuilding team, right? And I think having guys like that, we're just fun to be around, even if they're not heavy contributors or something. It's just nice to have, and I think he can actually be a contributor. I mean, that backup center position is going to be there for someone to claim, and he's a veteran and he's played in the NBA before, and he's going to be someone that the Rockets may have to lean on if Sengun does struggle with the fouls, or if somebody else struggles with fouls. It's going to be a fun team to watch next year. I can't wait. Like last year was. You're right. It was the the worst team in basketball, but significantly more fun than the season before, where they were
yeah,
the worst team in basketball, but there didn't seem to be any hope. And this last season, it's like they were the worst team in basketball, but there is that glimmer of hope, and it looks so fun to watch.
yeah. And we look. We still haven't talked about Eric Gordon. Obviously, we have to wait and see whether or not he's on the roster. I don't. I mean, I don't think there's any reason to believe that he won't be here. I mean, the rumors have been swirling with Eric Gordon now for 12 months.
Right.
But we haven't talked about Jayshawn Tate. I thought his extension was certainly worthy. I think he's set to have another really good season. We haven't brought up KJ Martin, who I think is a very solid player as well. And I know I briefly mentioned the sort of the hierarchy I think has been reset by the Christian Wood trade, which is super beneficial.
Yeah, I intentionally avoided KJ Martin because you're on the podcast.
Oh well, I don't know what his status is, but I do like him a
Right.
lot. And so I'll ask you this question: as of right now, well, let's just assuming Eric Gordon is with the team. How do you see the Rockets' rotation playing out?
I think I would start Eric Gordon. I like
If he's
him
on
in
the
that
roster,
starting.
he's absolutely starting. He's not coming off the bench.
Yeah,
If he's here, he's
KPJ.
starting.
Right. Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. Like KPJ, Jalen Green. I think Eric Gordon's the guy I'd start at 3. It gets a little tricky now because you have Jayshawn Tate, who's been a starter for you for 3
All right,
years,
that's
right?
6. All right, that's 6.
No, I would start. I would bench him. That's
No,
why
no,
I'd make
not
it harder.
you're okay. You basically mentioned your starters: Green, Porter, Gordon, Smith, and Sengun. And
Right.
Tate is 6, so that's 6.
Right. 6. Oh, you're talking about the rotation. Okay. 6, and then I'd probably
You got Eason, that's 7.
Eason. I'd
Christopher
probably
is 8.
Christopher. I'd probably like in terms of like my dependable guys. That's where I'd stop, and then I'd play around with the roster a little bit. Like
And
TyTy.
I think Garrison Matthews is going to play. We haven't talked about him yet.
Forgot about so many players on the team that I forgot
Garrison
about.
has put on some weight this summer. Now, whether or not he can keep that weight once they start playing games every other day and all that stuff, but he has bulked up a little bit.
And they're going to have him for a full year this year.
I actually went to a couple of workouts this summer, and he shot lights out. That's 9 guys right there. And in my opinion, an effective NBA rotate. I know so many people want teams to play 10. It's so tough to in my opinion, so tough to effectively. Maybe this is a little of the Mike D'Antoni in me, but it's so hard to play 10 guys.
I'm with you. Yeah.
To me, an ideal rotation is 8.5. So there you go. That's 9 guys. That's 9 guys right there.
And you got Boban to round it out at 10.
I mean, Boban, and where does TyTy fit into this? Where does Daishen Nix fit into this? Unfortunately, I think Garuba might still be the guy that's sort of an odd man out, especially if he can't get on the floor, which again,
I forgot to ask you about him. What's the latest on him? Because is he healthy? Have you heard anything about him?
He had was it the foot issue, the ankle issue? He just he can't get on the last year was a tough year for him. What if I remember again, he had the visa issues, right? And that's why he was a late arrival to summer league. Like he flew to Spain to summer league, really didn't have a chance to practice. And then he had some injuries last year, never could kind of gain any footing whatsoever. So much of what happened to him in his rookie season had nothing to do with him as a player. So there was just some things that he had really no control over. But if he can't get onto the floor, and again, he was hurt So I thought this was supposed to be a pretty important summer league for him. If you can't get on the floor, you can't really show who you are as a player. And as we just kind of illustrated, when you look at the roster as it currently is constructed, there even if he is healthy, I don't know where his place is in the rotation. And maybe if somebody ultimately gets hurt, maybe there is a spot for him in that regard. But I think he's probably going to see more minutes down in the G League than with the Rockets again this year.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be he's gonna be the G League guy to watch. And I really hope he thrives down there, because it would be really fun if he's a part of the Rockets' long term future. Just another option, even if you can't play all these guys, right? All these guys can't hit. Some of these guys you're gonna have to trade away. You're gonna have to consolidate. You're gonna have to get guys in free agency to replace or whatever. But if he hits, he'd be a really fun guy to have around the Rockets. And it's going to be fun to see how Rashid Hazard, I think it's his name, with the Vipers. He's going to be. Is he the favorite for head coach? Has he been announced?
Oh, you know what? I have no idea.
Right. I know Mahmoud got promoted.
Mahmoud now with the Rockets, yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can't wait to see how he does with that coaching staff. I think he's going to be great. The Vipers have had a hell of a history with head coaches.
Their player development history has been superb. I mean, going back to when did they? I mean, was it Aaron Brooks who they first was he the first guy they really kind of utilized?
Yeah, might have been him.
Was he? Yeah. They have a very, very positive history.
Terrence Jones.
They won 3 titles along the way too. So
yeah,
they've had not to mention the history of the coaches with the Vipers have been pretty solid too. So
yeah, top of the league. They've done a great job with the coaches, and that's why I think Mahmoud's going to be great.
I think he's an excellent coach.
Right,
and I think he's somebody that the players have a lot of respect for, and I thought he was terrific last year. I didn't pay a ton of attention to the Vipers, but obviously he won the title. I thought the team played the right way. I think he's an excellent coach, very vocal person. And I think he's a terrific addition to the staff. You almost were forced to add him to the staff based on his performance from last year.
Yeah, he won G League Coach of the Year last year. They won the championship, I think, and yeah, like their 7th banner or whatever. Like they all they do is win down there in the G League. Yeah, it's gonna be. I'm really happy for him. I really am. Hopefully we can get him on for another podcast. Although he might be barred from doing that now. Yeah, he's great. He's great.
Yeah, he's a good dude, and I'm happy for him. And again, he did a terrific job. And just again, going to some workouts over the course of the summer. He's a pretty vocal, no nonsense kind of in your face type of coach that he knows what he's doing. And I think he obviously got the best out of the Vipers last year. I mean, they were clearly better than anybody else in the G League last year.
Right. Has relationships with players on the roster, KJ Morgan, KPJ,
right. Yeah. So I think he's a terrific addition to the coaching staff. But yeah, I mean, I think the Rockets. I mean, we haven't mentioned Nwaba. Don't know how many.
We don't have to. We don't have to mention
how much of any of the other guys from the Dallas trade will be on this team when the season starts. But we already outlined 9 guys, I think, who are firmly. We didn't even mention KJ, right? Part of the. Did we mention KJ as part of the? We got to 9.
Yeah. We'll see.
I think he deserves. I think
it's going to be tough. Yeah.
I think he deserves to play as well. To be honest, I think he's a pretty good player. But they got some talent, but ultimately they need to take the steps, the winning steps that start to translate to winning games. But it's still part of the process. They're still very early in the rebuild. But there is much to be excited about.
Yeah, it's going to be really tough to get all these guys minutes. That's the tough part about rebuilding teams, right? You want to see everybody, but you can't. It's just like you have to have a cohesive lineup, as you said. Even if you're not trying to win a championship, you are trying to have like continuity and consistent play game to game. So it's just tough. I don't envy Silas next year, but I think we about covered everything. Thank you so much for taking out an hour and 10 minutes out of your
Oh, no
day to do
problem.
this.
Look, I'm ready. When the season ends, I really kind of unplug, whenever that is, whether it's at the end of the regular season, not making the playoffs, or it's whenever whenever the season ends, I kind of unplug from things quite a bit up until and then once the finals are over, I really start getting excited about. I was excited about the draft. I was excited about the summer league. And I'm very much looking forward to the start of training camp and seeing where these guys are, how much they've improved. Is Jalen the guy as we talked about? How much of an impact can Sengun have as a 30-minute a night kind of player, and then ultimately where Eason and Jabari Smith fit in with this group. And look, as we said, if Eric's still on this team, he will start. He deserves it. And he will be there. And he's somebody that has, even though he's a pretty quiet guy, he does carry a lot of respect in that locker room. And that's very, very important, especially for a veteran guy like him who's been around and has been a part of a lot of winning for a long time. So, I like Eric a lot personally. I mean, on a personal level, I hope they don't trade him because I do like him a lot. But he's going to play and he's going to start. I would be very surprised if he's here and he's not starting come day one.
Oh yeah, I mean, and again, like we talk about veterans aiding player development. And a lot of that conversation tends to shift to how is he aiding that player development off the floor, right? Is he putting in workouts with such and such player? But on the court, floor spacing aids player development as well, right? Opening up the floor for your young guys aids in player development, and I think he's going to be someone that's going to be really helpful if he's here.
Yeah, and his defensive versatility, and hopefully he can spin LeBron around like he did last year one more time in a Rockets uniform. We'll see.
Thank you so much for coming on, Craig.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
Where can we follow you on Twitter and find you next season?
The usual spots, AT&T Sportsnet. Looking forward to working with Ryan and Kaylee again. In fact, Ryan's in the process of moving to Houston full time. I don't know.
Okay.
He was actually just in town. I had dinner with him. They're not quite there yet, but he's in the process of doing so. So I'm excited about that. Really enjoyed working with him last year, and I thought he did a terrific job. It's tough for an outsider, especially a former player that really didn't have any ties to your team. But I thought he did a really good job of connecting the Rockets fan base. So I'm excited about that. And
where does he live right now?
Huh?
Where does he live right now?
LA.
LA. Okay.
Yeah.
Houston's a great place to live. I'm biased, obviously.
Yeah. I think obviously he's from out that way and went to UCLA, and I think that basically was always his home base, regardless where he was playing. I think his family's out there, his wife's family's out there, but obviously last year with he wasn't officially hired until mid-September, and then
breaking news to me.
He basically, he got here 1 week before the start of the preseason. I mean, so the start of the last year for him was very hectic, as one can imagine when you're trying to relocate like that in short order. But I think they're in the process of doing that. He's a really good guy. He's got a wonderful family. Had a chance to go out, went up with Matt Thomas to watch him play in the Big Three in Dallas.
Okay, how'd you do?
Well, in the game that we went to, picked up 2 fouls in the first 4 or 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then Lisa Leslie, who's their head coach, sat him down and never put him back in the game.
Yeah.
Never put him back in. The last couple of weeks, his best. For some reason, Joe Johnson hasn't been in the last 2 weeks. They really missed not having Joe Johnson on their team. He's probably the best player in the Big Three. But Ryan's best game of the season had actually occurred this past week. But when we went, she played him like 4 minutes. That was it.
Rough.
I was not happy about that.
Yeah, he got screwed. He got screwed by the coach. Happens.
But no, and of course, Twitter, CA_Rockets. But yeah, I'm excited about the start of the season, and it will be here before we know it.
Okay, I will talk to you down the road, man. Thank you
Yes,
so much
sir.
for coming on.
Thank you. Bye.